Sorry, Norman, but I've chosen you specifically for this here task. Come on, lad. There we go. One more go. Come on. Hey up! Welcome back. Now then, something a little bit different today. Something, well, all these years later, probably 50 or so years later, I can still hardly believe that that this happened, but I will be telling you the tale. And what a tale it is too. It's an incident from when I were about, let's say, 10, 11 years old, 12 maybe. And let's just say there was a pretty good chance that that particular incident could easily have unfolded in a slightly different way to the way in which it did, and as a result of that I wouldn't be speaking to you today. But before we get into that fascinating, scarcely credible but 100% true story, please can I implore you, as always, to subscribe to the channel. It makes a massive difference, a significant difference to my endeavours. The more people that subscribe to my channel, the more and more meaningful content that I can produce for you good people out there. So please, if you aren't already subscribed, please subscribe, and please from time to time check your subscription status, because subscriptions for some strange reason drop out without people knowing. And that applies to just about everybody's YouTube channel from what I can gather. So please, if you do that for me, I really would appreciate it. As I've said many times before, it doesn't cost you a penny, not now or in the future. It doesn't commit you to anything. It's just like a bit like clicking a follow on other social media platforms. It's no more than that. And if I bore you to death after a short period of time, all you have to do is one more click and you can unsubscribe. Aye, so that'd be that. So I'm out on Little Norman today, my classic 350. Hey, I love this little fella. And when I revealed on the channel that it was called Norman, somebody wrote in and said, oh, every time I hear the name Norman, I'm always reminded of the Spiny Norman from from Monty Python. Do any of you remember that? Monty Python's Flying Circus, Spiny Norman. Wanted some rabid hedgehog or porcupine or something. I can't remember. I just have a vague recollection of Spiny Norman. So maybe I'll call Norman Spiny Norman. Hey, Spiny Norman, what do you reckon to that, Norman? I absolutely love this bike. There's nothing you can't do on the Royal Enfield Classic 350, and each and every riding experience brings me something the previous one didn't. Fantastic little bike in so many ways that I couldn't begin to articulate. You want to get yourself one of these? Yeah, so right wheeler, you're saying, what are you doing in the urban environment when you have on your doorstep the endless resplendent beauty of the Yorkshire Dales? What am I doing on this here road, the A650, into the city of Bradford? Right, well, I was born in Bradford. I was born in July of 1962, back end of July 1962, and I was born in St Luke's Hospital on Little Horton Lane in Bradford, and thereafter my formative and pretty much unremembered years were spent in the flat that me, my mum and my dad lived in above Pie Herbert's Pie and Pea Shop in Carlisle Road, Bradford. Carlisle Road, Bradford. Pie Herbert's was number 209 and we were number 209A. I am reliably informed. I have very few, if any, memories of living there. And shortly after living there, we moved to a council house on a Bradford council estate called Fagley. Yeah, Fagley. And we lived on a road called Foston Lane. Foston Lane. And it was at number 44. 44 Foston Lane. And yeah, lived there with my mum, my dad, and on and off my half brother, who's a lot older than me, but that'd be a tale for another day. And I don't really have any memories of living at Foston Lane in Fagley. There are one or two old black and white photographs kicking about of me toddling around the lawn, because all the council houses back then had lawns. And that would have been a rented property, rented from the council. Good luck doing that anymore. But that we could just about afford to do. And then we left there and we went to live near the Leeds boundary, but still in Bradford, a district of Bradford called Thornbury. And we lived we moved to my maternal grandfather's house, and the four of us lived there with him. So that was just basically a two-bedroomed terrace house with an attic room, which later we got sort of dormered. For a big fashion putting dormers into old terrace houses back then. Aye. So my first significant, enduring, if you like, consecutive memories as a kid relate to when we lived at number 43 Woodhall Terrace. And it was a great little community, because me auntie and uncle lived opposite, and we had a pseudo auntie and uncle living opposite too, and a lot of neighbours that were actually friends rather than neighbours. And you know, back in the day where communities were communities, and I was the typical latchkey kid. Even as young as 10, 11, I was making my own way back from school and letting myself into an empty house because mum and dad were still at work. But of course, with that many relatives and friends living on the same road, felt perfectly safe. So that's how life was back in the sort of shall we say, mid to late 60s and best part of the early 70s. And we lived there until 1976, when we moved to another district of Bradford called Bradford Moor. And back then we were seen as being upwardly mobile for doing so. But you wouldn't be so considered now, I don't think. But yeah, but this little tale I'm gonna tell you relates to when we were living at Woodhall Terrace. Now then, I don't know if you know your crime history But back in the early 70s, Britain, the United Kingdom, had a bit of a serial killer going on. A serial killer, murderer, armed robber, kidnapper, who was active in terms of his most serious offending between 1971 and 1974. But he wasn't caught until December of 1975. Now, his name was Donald Neilson. Donald Neilson. And, yeah. He acquired, before too long, the nickname of the Black Panther. And basically, over a sort of 3-year or more stretch, he committed a number of robberies, usually post office robberies, and in the course of that murdered 3 people. 2 sub-postmasters and I think a sub-postmaster's partner, spouse. And his 4th murder conviction ultimately was with regard to his kidnapping and the subsequent death of the 17-year-old heiress called Leslie Whittle. And Donald Neilson kidnapped Leslie Whittle from her home, and would you believe, took her some distance, put her down a drain, and stuck her on a ledge and put a ligature round her neck and kept her there for quite some time while he tried to extort a large sum of money from the family. So a right nasty piece of work, multiple murderer, and utterly ruthless. Aye, so I had, as a child, so bear in mind, will you, that this is long before I joined the police. So I have to say, in 30 years of frontline policing, I never in those 30 years came across anybody as dangerous and notorious as Donald Neilson. But at sort of 10, 11-year-oldish, I did. So, how did that happen? Well, Donald Neilson lived about 300-400 yards from us, not on the same road, but on an adjacent road, which I'm going to show you. And he were a bit of a joiner by trade, and just behind where he lived, he had a garage and a bit of a yard where he kept all his, I suppose you would call it, all his business materials, his lumber and sheeting and bits and bats. Now, no, I don't know about you, but this would be sort of, it'd have to be October time, probably, I would guess, about 1972 or 1973. So I'd be 10, 11 years old. And so yeah, he had this joinery business, did Donald Neilson. And of course, 1972, 1973, he was at the peak of his notoriety. And there was a photo fit of him. Now, photo fits, normally police photo fits, aren't very often a good likeness of the culprit. There can be a bit of a desperate effort, though an understandable one. But what I should say from the outset is that the police photo fit of Donald Neilson, which was compiled on the back of, I believe, one of his post office victims who, during a struggle, managed to unmask him, because he always used to wear a mask. Managed to unmask him in the middle of a struggle, and Neilson ran off. He didn't actually, on that occasion, take anybody's life. But as a result of that, a photo fit was compiled, and interestingly, that photo fit actually was a dead ringer, an absolute dead ringer for him. But back then, yeah, he lived about 300-400 yards from us. Now, of course, it'd have been late in the year, probably October time, because we were chumping. Who remembers chumping? Which is an old expression up here for kids going around collecting firewood for bonfire on bonfire night. So we were going around collecting firewood, me and my mates, probably about 4 or 5 of us. And of course, kids being kids, we were very, shall we say, resourceful when it came to securing wood, because we wanted to be accredited with building the biggest and best bonfire. So we thought it'd be a right good idea to go to a certain yard where there were stacks of wood, which, unbeknown to us, were actually Donald Neilson's business materials, with his best wood, his best 4x2 lumber. And we thought it'd be a really good idea to go in and just take some of it for bonfire. Didn't see anything wrong with that whatsoever at the time. As you do. Aye. So we were in the throes, yes, the throes of handing lumps of prime lumber, construction lumber, over a dividing fence to each other to take away to set a fire. And Donald Neilson, and bearing in mind, as I said, at this time, at the absolute height of his notoriety, of his offending, he'd probably murdered 2 or 3 people by then, and was far and away the most wanted man in Britain. The photo fit picture was all over the broadcast media and the newspapers, and became a more familiar face than the bloody Queen. Aye. So, unfortunately, while we were in the process of relieving him of his lumber, he saw us, he caught us, and as you can imagine, he wasn't very impressed. And I think it's fair to say we got a proper kicking. Now, I don't recall ever suffering any visible injuries or any serious injuries or anything like that, but he threw us around that joinery yard like rag dolls. And I remember him picking up my push bike and throwing it at me, and it landing on top of me, and it bending the handlebars and buggering up 1 or 2 other bits and bats on the bike. And I can remember his face now, clear as day, absolutely remember exactly what he looked like, what his expression was, etc. But of course, back then as a kid, didn't make any connection whatsoever with this here most wanted man in Britain, because there was absolutely nothing about the suspect, as he was back then, that suggested he was from anywhere near Bradford. Furthest thought from our minds, I would suggest. So he gave us this proper ragging, and of course I ran home with my tail between my legs, and all my mates ran off to their respective homes. But among the group of us, weren't all shrinking violets like me. There were There are a couple of slightly more forthright, headstrong individuals, all about the same age, give or take. And whereas I went home with my tail between my legs and didn't dare say a word to my mum and dad because I thought I'd really get into trouble, they thought it would be a really good idea to get their own back. So they waited a bit and then they went back to the joiner's yard of the most wanted man in Britain, triple murderer by then, and smashed his greenhouse windows. Hey, I kid you not. They went back and lobbed half Charlie through his greenhouse and legged it. So I didn't know that this had happened. Had absolutely no idea that this had taken place until about a couple of hours later. There's a knock on the door, and one of my mates there at the door saying, police want to speak to you, want to speak to me. And I remembered my dad saying to this copper, or a sergeant, saying, don't want any trouble here, etc, etc. Remember it vividly. Anyway, so in came these two police officers, one of them a sergeant, and it transpired that Donald Neilson, the then most wanted man in Britain, had actually called the police. Now this speaks to the front of the man, doesn't it, eh? Can you imagine? He's got 3 murders under his belt. He gives half a dozen kids a good kicking for trying to nick his wood, and then a couple of them go back and put his greenhouse windows through, and he calls the police, which I suppose from our point of view were a better option than him taking his sawn-off shotgun to all of us. Mind you, he'd struggle covering that one up, wouldn't he? But anyway, right on his doorstep. But even so, we could have suffered far, far worse. And basically, the police understood and verified the fact that although I'd been involved in the first incident of appropriating his wood, or not appropriating his wood, as the case may be, for bonfire purposes, just give me a bit of a warning, like, right, young man, just be careful in future, but be careful who you associate yourself with and where you're going. And this fellow, we've spoken to Mr. Neilson, and is happy not to proceed with any further complaints in relation to your wood endeavours, your bit of chumping, and so that'll be that, be a good lad, etc, etc. And my dad, thank you very much, Sergeant, excellent. Now I look back now because of course 1 or 2 years later after that, Donald Neilson was arrested, and he tried to take 2 coppers hostage with a shotgun when they apprehended him for looking a bit suspicious, nowhere near Bradford, I hasten to add. And he produced his shotgun and he took them hostage, and made them drive a certain distance in the police car. But then 2 very, very brave police officers, obviously, between them, managed to distract him and overpower him, and with the help of a couple of passers-by, bystanders or whatever, good citizens were able to detain and arrest him. And of course it all went to trial, and he was convicted of the 4 murders, the 3 post office murders, the murder of Leslie Whittle, and quite a few other offences as well. Sentenced to life imprisonment, and that were in 1975 he was arrested, so I believe he was sent to trial and was convicted in 1976, wouldn't it, and died in prison, and rightly so. But I look back at that event and I think, bloody hell, you know, that photo fit were a dead ringer, an absolute dead ringer. And right at the height of that man's offending, where that photo fit was on every newspaper and on every news channel, the police responded to a call from him and took a complaint from him and spoke to him. And I often wonder what those officers thought when it eventually transpired that the person that they had been dealing with as a quote-unquote victim of crime was in fact the most wanted man in Britain. Because if they'd have twigged, and I'm not being unfair to them, it's easier said than done, innit? It's like I said, most photo fits back then, really, probably as now, to the extent that there are any, not usually that accurate. So to be fair to them, there'd be no obvious reason to suspect him, but you never know. And that sergeant, bloody hell, he'd been chief constable by now, wouldn't he? would have certainly not retired at sergeant rank. So I'm going to take you to where we used to live now, because we're coming up to it. This is Thornbury Roundabout in Bradford, just a stone's throw from the Leeds boundary. The next little town is a town called Pudsey, of Pudsey Bear fame. And that's just on the Leeds side of the boundary. Aye. So this here be where he lived. That house there. Alright, but I'll show you where I used to live. Here we go. My childhood memories. So, number 43. And there it is. That is where I spent the biggest part of my childhood. 43 Woodhall Terrace. Aye, so this is the back of the road where I used to live. So these here 50/50 tyres I've got on Norman should be perfect for this little job. Bit of off-roading. Aye, 43, where are we? There it is. Yeah, there. I remember that porch being built. I remember us having that porch built on the back. And so there you can see kitchen to the left, and above bathroom and my little bedroom just to the right there. Hey, memories. But not even a through road now. It were always unmade dirt track here. We used to play out here, playing in the muck as kids do, and generally making a nuisance of ourselves. Hey! I wonder if Norman's going to get over this. Soon find out. Clearly some sort of work going on here. Sorry, Norman, but I've chosen you specifically for this here task. Come on, lad. There we go. One more go. Come on. Good lad. Right, we're away. Aye, so yeah, so that's where we used to muck about as kids, and up there were where we used to have as bonfire, or where we intended having our bonfire. And so yeah, so as you can see from there to here, and that there is where we got a proper ragging from a serial killer, the most wanted man in Britain. He had his joiner's yard there, and we were handing wood over the fence to be picked up just on the roadside there. So we got us kicking. It's probably where this breeze block garage affair is now. We got a right toweling, and he lived there. Yeah. Aye, so can you believe it that let me see, so if that was 73, I joined the police in 83, so 10 years before I joined the police, I had a close encounter with a serial killer. Aye, so this is where it happened all those years ago. This fence that you can see behind me here, behind Norman there, that's where we were handing the wood over to go to take to bonfire up the road there, and we were caught mid-felony, if you like, by a man who at that point in time was in the middle of a murder spree. Yeah, Donald Nielsen. So between 1971 and 1974, committed a number of post office robberies and eventually kidnapped a young heiress. And in the course of those events, murdered, as the court later decided, 4 people. Absolutely notorious at the time, the most wanted man in the country, and he had the brass cheek to go call the police right in the middle of his offending, because some local kids have put a brick through his greenhouse window. So that was the measure of that man. When I look back now and wonder two things that strike me all these years later. One is that we probably got away lightly, considering what he was capable of and what he could have done to us. And second, what a missed opportunity by those officers. Like I say, I lay no blame whatsoever. That could have been any cop on any day. But I bet they looked back and thought, blimey, what could have been. But anyway, hope that was of some interest to you. Just a little tale that you couldn't script it really, could you? But it's true. It's a matter of the history. Not exactly a claim to fame, but certainly an interesting precursor to a life of policing. I've got a new friend. Have a look here. Hello. Hello. Hello, baby. Hello, sweetheart. Oh, bless you. Yeah. Hello. Oh, you're gorgeous, aren't you? And friendly as well. Hey. Hey. I'd love to take him home, but hey. I don't think Eddie would approve somehow. They glued to me. They go in panniers. He, she. You go in panniers, wouldn't you? Anyway, that's not about to happen. So, yeah, please click a like. Please click subscribe. Most of my content's not remotely like this, but it's just a little part of my history I thought that might interest you. So, until the next time, and in the meantime, ride safe, be kind, and I'll see thee.